Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast, where we're all about sharing the forbidden secrets and slightly embellished truths about corporate cybersecurity programs. We're ranting, we're raving, and we're telling you the stuff that nobody talks about on their fancy website and trade show giveaways, all to protect you from cyber criminals. And now, here's your hosts, Mike Rotondo, Zach Fuller, and Lauro Chavez.
Hello and good morning. Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast. If you are listening to it in the morning, which you should, actually, fun fact before we start, the brain is just fresher in the morning. It's been proven by science. Judges are more likely to have favorable and better decisions made in the mornings, and doctors make less mistakes in operations when they're done in the morning. So if you go to the doctor, go in the morning, you listen to the Cyber Rants Podcast, start your day out with it. I mean, what a better way to start a day than the Cyber Rants Podcast. I mean, absolutely incredible. And we have a good one here for you today because this is a little bit different. We're just going with it. We have been very, very formal over the past 40 some episodes, and we want to just free flow a little bit and see what comes up. So before we do that, but we are still going to follow our format here roughly. Mike, you want to kick us off with the news?
Yeah, so just based on your intro, so don't have surgery at 9 o'clock at night.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Doctors are tired at that point, just like your IT and security professionals as well.
Right? Gotcha.
Get with them in the morning.
And I've also heard that the Cyber Rants podcast has 90% more fiber than other podcasts. So that's why it's good in the morning.
Excellent point. It does. It does. At least 90%. Recommended by doctors around the world.
Exactly.
It always makes me have to go.
So on to the headlines. 91% of IT teams have felt forced to trade security for business operations. Raise your hand if you're surprised by that. In total, 90% of those surveyed said they have felt pressured to compromise security due to the needs for business continuity during COVID-19 pandemic. 76% said that security had taken a backseat, and furthermore, 83% believe that working from home has created a ticking time bomb for corporate security incidents. We got that going for us. Surprise, surprise, REvil's ransomware servers mysteriously came back online. The dark web servers for REvil ransomware operation have suddenly turned back on after almost a 2-month absence. It's not sure why, but watch your email.
They got a patch.
Exactly. They're using Microsoft. Oh, by the way, Microsoft shares temp fix for ongoing Office 365 zero-day attacks. Microsoft shared mitigation for a remote code execution vulnerability in Windows that is being exploited in targeted attacks against Office 365, Office 2019, Windows 10, and Windows servers from 2008 through 2019. So I'm going to go with that's all of it. The browser rendering engine that is also used by Microsoft Documents as well. The CVE is CVE 2021-40444. Check that one out. Attacks on IoT devices have doubled over the past year. The number of attacks targeting IoT devices has almost doubled from the second half of 2020 to the first 6 months of this year, according to Kaspersky. IoT devices from smartwatches to smart home accessories, that's your washer and dryer, have become an essential part of our everyday lives, and so cyber criminals have skillfully switched their attention to these. What Kaspersky did was they set up honeypots. They were receiving around 639 million cyber attacks in the final 6 months of 2020, soared to 1.5 billion by the first half of 2021. Once compromised, these IoT devices can be conscripted into botnets and used to mine illegally for cryptocurrencies, launch DDoS attacks, steal personal data. So if you're having trouble getting your washer and dryer or refrigerator to do the right thing, it's probably doing a DDoS attack of some foreign government somewhere.
I thought my Wi-Fi toothbrush was acting a little funny this morning. So that could be why.
It could be. Moving a little slow. Ragnar Locker, talk to the cops or the feds, we leak your data. Ragnar Locker is a ransomware operation. They're now taking their cues from the mafia, apparently, which is, I think, they're trying to bring back the initial pressure of, they're using the old scareware social engineering playbook, like demanding a payoff from someone they attack, claiming to have recorded them watching porn via their webcam. And it's basically, if you breathe a word of this to law enforcement, we're just going to bring you down. So they're starting to strong arm. Hey, on the good news, Biden announces cybersecurity initiative partnership. The White House announced that NIST, would work with industry and other partners to develop a new framework enhancing the security and integrity of the technology supply chain. It also announced that the Industrial Control System and Cybersecurity Initiative would be expanded to natural gas pipelines. Surprise, surprise, those involved will be Apple, IBM, Google, and Microsoft, each pledging about 10 to 20 billion over the next 5 years. Good PR move. IBM said that they would train 150,000 people in cybersecurity skills in the next 3 years. Yeah, I don't see that happening either. I mean, they may try that, but there's such a need for cybersecurity people that they'll be swallowed up long before they get to the government.
A new framework, that's going to change everything, just like the last 15 new frameworks that came out.
Yeah, and
that's going to stop cybercrime.
Yeah, exactly. And the deadline they're going to have for December 31st of 2023 will get pushed 43 times.
That's awesome, because then we can just retire. We won't be needed anymore with the new framework.
Exactly.
One framework to rule them all.
Exactly.
The perfect framework. Yeah, God himself written on tablets. Okay, so
we're not jaded or anything. We've just seen everything.
Yeah, here we go. Microsoft doing security, and let's get a hobo to fix the fence. Hey, So is it my turn for exploits?
It's your turn, man.
Okay, well, since we were talking about the Department of Redundancy department, I might as well start this week's exploits off with the important pieces. WordPress. Yes, there are 4 of them. There are 4 of them again this week. So if you're out there, having dirty relations with the WordPress open source software, make sure you're paying attention. Okay, so the first one I've got is called duplicate page. So if you're running duplicate page, there's a stored cross-site scripting that's active for that. If you've got the plugin sitemap page, that's also got a stored cross-site scripting accessible there as well. If you're running the survey and poll plugin, version 5.7.3's got a SQL injection. There are actually 2 of them for that to pull data right out of the WordPress site. So make sure that if you've got that survey and poll, your data is going to get leaked. Okay, if you're running TablePress 1.14, there is CSV injection. So you can upload malicious CSV files and other types of things with that TablePress. So make sure if you're playing with WordPress, you're playing safe. I don't have anything else. I mean, you covered the Microsoft stuff already, and that's Department of Redundancy, right? So I mean, what's left in the dirty word of sludge out there for exploitation? WordPress.
At a certain point, you just get this breach fatigue where you just start looking at the news and go, I can't do this anymore. I need to look at kitten videos or puppies or something.
I need to see that little mouse right in the flight one more time. It's so big. Yeah, I'm actually rickrolling myself at this point just for fun. So what are we going to talk about today? Do we even know yet?
Well, before we talk about anything, we're going to take a quick commercial break.
Want even more Cyber Rants? Be sure to subscribe to the Cyber Rants podcast. Get your copy of our best-selling book, Cyber Rants, on Amazon today. This podcast is brought to you by Silent Sector, a firm dedicated to building world-class cybersecurity programs for mid-market and emerging companies across the U.S. Silent Sector also provides industry-leading penetration tests and cyber risk assessments. Visit silentsector.com and contact us today.
And we're back. Laura, you posed an excellent question, maybe a question of the year. What are we going to talk about today?
That's probably shouldn't be the question of the year, but probably something cybersecurity.
I think. Well, yeah. I think I think one topic that warrants discussion is the crazy world of. Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, but the crazy world of COVID and what that's been doing to our environment, and to the technology world. Did anybody else's COVID test come back saying below average? Was that just mine?
No, I got an app. I don't know what that means.
Went to the van in the Walmart parking lot. I mean, it looked legit. I don't understand why I needed the blindfold still, but I digress. So yeah, I think the COVID, so people are strapped in, people are working remote. It just opened up a huge world of a huge mess, really. And cyber criminals seem to not be affected by COVID. Why isn't COVID killing cyber criminals?
It probably is. We just don't hear about it because we can't find all of them. So maybe it is. Well, so Mike teed this whole thing off with that article, right? About security professionals saying that they've had to sacrifice operationalized security and defense in depth for, just for the business to just, continue to make money, right, and go forward. And I think we've seen that in the pandemic, just by the no one was prepared for this. I think a lot of the remote workforce that was going to be necessary, and then there was a shortage, right? There was a lack of devices. I remember we had some clients that were having a hard time just getting laptops, from Apple or anybody else. So you've got kind of equipment shortages, kind of in, all happening in parallel with this. You can't come to the, you got to be working remote. How do we do that securely? And so we had individuals that were allowing the use of their home computing, right? And they're like, oh, we're on Office 365, so it's cool. It's cool. You can use your home computer there with, I know little Timmy comes and does homework on it with his friends and plays Doom, but he's harmless. So.
Well, yeah, I can't tell you how many clients I had pre-pandemic were like, oh yeah, our remote capability is more than adequate. And, have you ever tested it? Well, no, we just know it is. And lo and behold, as soon as it hit, boom, was not adequate. So,
well, this all comes back to, right, incident response. I mean, and I don't even want to get into the government's business of this, but I mean, to be honest, right, you can tell that really no country in the world had practiced for a pandemic. We hadn't really practiced. And that's why it's so valuable, when we do the incident response tabletops and those sorts of things, that we're just like in the military, right? We practice these exercises so that when it happens, you're more comfortable in the in the chaos, I guess. Really, you know what I mean? Because it's really what it is.
Training is over.
Yeah, hopefully, right? Hopefully the incident response plan is up to date, and and so I think that's what we're seeing here, is that a lot of companies just had to really make sacrifices to keep the lights on, and that included lessening security standards, right, that they may or may not have known they had, by allowing personal devices that they had no control over, even allowing employees just to go out and purchase things, right? just to use, just go grab something that you want, which again, in times of haste is fine, and you can make it secure if you can get them to deploy an agent and that sort of thing, right? But in places that none of that was happening, I don't think it was thought about. I think we saw a lot of organizations struggle. They didn't have a kind of a centralized management system, like if they weren't on Microsoft Active Directory or some other kind of cloud-based,
right,
LDAP or whatever. Then they struggled as well, because they had no idea who was connected and had no control over anything. VPNs hadn't really been checked, and there was a lot. I think there was a lot of scramble.
There was a lot of VPN vulnerabilities that suddenly got discovered too. All the RDP issues that came up and those sort of things, because no one had really pen tested, no one had really validated them. They just loaded the basic stuff and probably didn't pay that much attention to it.
Yeah, well, I think what probably happened, RDP is kind of it's one of those things. It's like WordPress, right? It's like use at your own risk, right? So, but what happened? What happened is the business individual went down to some IT manager and said, "Well, do we have an option? How do we do this?"
Yeah,
and somebody coughed up RDP, and they were like, "Cool, let's use it," and didn't do any security around it, or kind of try to put security layers on it. And that's where we started to see a lot of that getting abused. I mean, yeah, you're right, like with VPN too. Older versions of VPN software not using strong enough cert. So there was I think, and some of the vendors had major vulnerabilities too, that were identified, because I think as everybody moved to those practices, they became points of interest for cyber criminals, right, to start poking at.
Yeah, so I just want to know who the 9% of people who did not feel any pressure to compromise security at the businesses they work. I mean, in all honesty, we've all worked in places, actually everywhere I think I've worked, we've had to compromise security for business. And so I got to assume that 9% all were the security people for weed dispensaries, maybe. So there's no pressure. I don't know.
Could be, or it could be a combination of that and the 9% of people that just randomly click on surveys to answer them to get the $30 Amazon gift card or whatever. So they may have just been doing other things, clicking through, not really reading
I think you're being gracious. I think that was the, I think the 9% is the automated responses that came from the bots. So
There you go.
yeah, just as good, right? But yeah, I think we've always felt that pressure of, there's always budgets to contend with. It's all over the place.
This brings a big consideration too. It's kind of a big lesson. I think there's silver lining in everything, right? And you can learn a lot from this. But I think for organizations and for security practitioners, for IT practitioners, this is COVID, especially when it started, is a very good example of sometimes the business objectives to the leadership are just flat out going to be more important than anything that you're doing, right? And yes, you're an enabler of the business and all that, but they need operations, they need things to keep going, even if it's just thrown together, patched up. They want the business to survive through this, and I think that's true. I think that's true in business. It was certainly true in the military. Sometimes you're taking imperfect action, and that beats perfect inaction. So while we would like things to be smooth, and we certainly rant about how things should be and such, but ultimately, from a business objective, the business has got to keep going, and those are just risks, especially in something dramatic like COVID that hits. Those are risks that just have to be taken because there's still limited resources, and somebody's got to make the decision and move on it. And we are all guilty of not making perfect decisions every time, except for you guys. You guys make perfect decisions 100% of the time. I'm only about 65%. So
that's why we're customer facing.
That's true. that's true. So
gosh, I feel that hot air in my skirt.
Get paid the big bucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to see how all this went down. Well, on top of that, another observation that we saw firsthand, of course, was a lot of mid-market companies flat out froze their budgets at the beginning of COVID, right? So they weren't doing anything, and other than just trying to get their people to work remotely, everything else they just essentially stopped or maintained kind of the bare minimum of what they were doing. And so new initiatives, all these things got sidelined and put off, and now figure over a year later, they've ramped back up and such. So I think there are a lot of companies that handled it tremendously well, but certainly nobody perfect, right? But at least I think the lessons learned out of this is, hey, wow, there really is an importance to planning and testing to make sure our assumptions are correct, right? It's business continuity, disaster recovery, all of that is critical. But I like your analogy, Laura, to the military, right? I mean, the Army, they basically, you're gonna practice and practice and practice. They're gonna make you sweat till you bleed, and you're gonna get it right every time. And I think in the business world is just doesn't do that. They don't put the same amount of emphasis on practicing operations, on preparation, on after action reviews, on all of those things that you're used to doing in the military. So just an interesting.
Well, that's why our first responders are so good, right? Is that they're doing real world work every day. So they have that repetitive knowledge that's just, they're learning all the time, and they're getting more familiar with, consistency and seeing same things over and over again. And yeah, you're right. Businesses don't practice that. I mean, how many fires do you think would get put out if there's only one fire every 10 years? You think no one ever practiced? Do you think the fire department would be real efficient with getting that blaze taken down? No, that's why I think it's they're all training all the time, right? Because it's a matter of time. And I think for businesses they should assume the same thing. It's a matter of when, and it's better just to do some training exercises. And you're right, Zach, it doesn't matter how frequent, I mean.
One thing I've seen though, organizations, I think through all of this have become more conscious and more proactive. I'd say that's another benefit
Absolutely.
That's come out of all this. We've seen more and more companies coming to us at Silent Sector, going to other partners, vendors, all these different places, proactively reaching out saying, hey, we know this is a problem. It could be in the future. Whereas a year and a half, 2 years ago, a lot of organizations, mid-market, smaller companies and such, they're just waiting until somebody's forcing their hand, a client request, a compliance requirement, whatever, and the tides have really turned. So I think that is going to make us stronger, really, as a nation, and really the backbone of our economy.
I've seen that from a government perspective. When I was doing consulting at a state agency, they were just looking to get through the next 12 months budget. So they weren't willing to make any changes. They just they were like, well, we'll deal with it. If there's a big problem, we'll deal with it in the next budget. There was no proactivity at all from a governmental level.
Yeah, but I think Zach makes a good point, right? I mean, business is a kind of supposed to be a perpetual machine, right? It's it's gonna have survival instincts on its own, and those operational instincts are that'll cut out cybersecurity budgets and everything else. And the pandemic, I think, showed that there might have been, like, we saw a lot of hospitals, a lot of healthcare industry start to get hit right at the initial part of it, which is that's a dirty move, right? I think we talked about that in some podcasts, right? But it was in the news, and so that's a dirty move. But there were probably a lot of security initiatives that were on the last part of getting budget for endpoint protection, and maybe an upgrade to something else, new firewalls, intrusion detection. There could have been a lot of things, and then they just we have to hold it, right? And so they put all that stuff on pause. And like you said, Mike, they'll wait that 12 months or whatever, or they'll just they'll make it through the brunt of it and deal with what they have to. And some of that, what they have to deal with, ended up being ransomware and, unfortunately, like, the worst of it. So it was, it's unfortunate. It didn't happen to everybody, thank goodness. But, some fell victim to that because of the stoppage of operational spend. And we saw that too. Proactivity is back, certainly enforced.
It is. Yeah. It is. And we have to recognize too, through all that, I mean, that IT professionals out there are really unsung heroes. I mean, these men and women they were going, they're pulling 24-hour days and stuff like that to keep their companies going. And a lot of work there to make that transition. So hats off to the IT professionals that pushed through and maintained connectivity and effectiveness in the workplace.
It's funny how we're never remembered unless something blows up.
Yeah, well, of course,
Then it's the damn IT guy.
You just stay down in the basement and don't talk to anybody. You're weird.
Exactly.
Now I can stay in my own basement at home, so that's fine.
There you go.
That's fine. But yeah, no, you're right, Zach. Hats off to all the IT engineers and app developers, and kind of had to keep all of this running in a remote state. And IT had to spin up a lot of clever contraptions to pull some of this stuff off, and especially the teams that are small, the 1 or 2 man shops, or two women shops that are, maintaining a massive organization, and they refuse to give them budget for more people.
Yeah.
So we see that a lot. So many hats off to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The other kind of silver lining or optimistic thing here that I see, of course, is it's blatantly obvious, right? Is the acceptance of a remote workforce. And there's been, for the longest time, it's like you got to have everybody in an office, right? Whereas now organizations are learning, and perfect timing too, right? Because of the shortage of IT and cybersecurity professionals, organizations are now learning, okay, well, I can hire anybody in the country, or the world for that matter, that is going to fulfill that role in a strong way. So you aren't limited anymore to geographic region for your workforce, especially important for the technology professionals. So I think that's here to stay. I know some organizations are moving back to an office environment, but there's that if they want the best talent, if they want the best talent, they're going to have to give them the option.
I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah, they're giving them the option, and see, what I also read is that statistically, I know there was a lot of problems, right, with with some households, right, with the husband and the wife being in close proximity. Sure, of course, whatever. But I think a lot of IT professionals kind of flourished during the time because of the being home with the family and, being home and it kind of put them in a happy place. And it seemed like they did more work, to the fact that now they're talking about a 4-day work week being adequate for some of these organizations. And they're trying to, labor force is trying to move towards that. I believe they're starting to feel that they can be in the situation where some of them are home or remote or in the places that make them happy. They can be more productive. And so it's easier to spend 10 hours or 9 hours or whatever doing it, doing the job that you like from the place that you like. And so I think we'll not only see the remote force option and some full-time probably no doubt stay around, or you may see a shift to possibly a 4-day work week as well.
Well, everybody knows you're more productive working at home once you get into that. I mean, it really is, because you not only are you just focused on work, it's easier to work in a more comfortable place, but you're eliminating a lot of the drive-bys, right? I'm not stopping by your cube to talk about whatever, right? And once you eliminate those kind of things.
I miss stopping by your cube and talking about whatever. You know what I mean? That was some of the best times we ever had.
Yeah.
Hey, were you guys the employees that hung out at the water cooler and wasted like 5 hours a day chit-chatting?
If by water cooler you mean the stash of whiskey and glasses that Mike kept under the cabinet, then yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, don't tell HR.
That little part of the server room that had chairs.
Yeah, and the crash cart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other silver lining, I think, from a personal perspective, that I think I've learned from this, and I think a lot of others too, is in how to multitask and stay focused in an environment where you do have young ones. You know what I mean? I think we've been on client calls. I know I've been on client calls with my little one coming into the room, and we've almost been in situations in the podcast where the little ones have busted into the room. And I know I've spent time with clients on the phone and on Zoom where their little ones are coming into the room and sitting on their laps. And, I think it's like bring your young one to work day every day. And it's funny because even though we're doing this remote, even though we're doing this through Zoom and we're working on documentation or, doing these walkthroughs for frameworks or general consulting for architecture diagrams or whatever it is that we're in that meeting for, it goes just fine, even with the kids there. And I think that's a really cool thing for everybody to, be able to just experience at least and learn.
What I've noticed less of though, because I remember before COVID, if anybody can remember that far back, there were always, when remote working was new, you'd always run across that story of you'd hear a toilet flush on a meeting, someone would walk through half naked through the office or whatever. That doesn't happen as much anymore. I think people have gotten a little more used to it, and so you're not seeing those kind of things happen.
No, there was some Zoom bombing that, occurred right when this started went, and Zoom realized that, well, they had the feature that just didn't turn it on by default. In any case, yeah, there was some misbehavior that was happening, right? I think people were taking advantage. There were some backgrounds in the student world that I saw out there that, involved some adult film references, right?
Well,
they would use for their
I'm just
backgrounds.
talking about, mistakes and lack of discipline, like someone taking their laptop to the bathroom and not realizing they're not on mute. Kind of stuff. That used to happen all the time, and
all the time. Yeah,
there was
definitely.
a company that you and I worked at a few years ago that I can't remember what it was called. There was some husband who didn't realize he was on video, and he looked like he was hungover for 3 days, and then his wife walked in the room wearing nothing but like a slip, and I was just like, the whole meeting just kind of stopped.
People are probably more conscious now. They have, plus people have kind of their designated video conference spaces in their houses now. Not quite related, but something just came to mind. You know what I'm glad is going by the wayside? The phrase, the saying, the new normal. Did that drive anybody else crazy? But it always drove me nuts when people said the new normal over and over and over. Just constantly hearing it.
Yeah, that's
pretty excited that's not said as much.
Because we're in the normal. I don't know. I think that
it's not new anymore.
It's not. It's just that moment is no longer new. Now it's this moment. Wait, now it's this moment. No, now it's this moment. Yeah.
Those sayings that people get into that just kind of flow out. Kind of like when people say to be honest or to tell you the truth. It's like, well, why don't you just be honest? You shouldn't have to say that. Or
when someone leads a conversation, it's like, I'm not trying to be a dirtbag or anything, but yeah, then you're going to be a dirtbag. pretty much. As soon as you enter a conversation with that statement, I already know how this is going to go.
With all due respect.
Like,
Well, hey.
I did say with all due respect. I don't know. I don't remember the rest of that quote, but I just remember he said something absolutely horrible right after it. So,
Well, this has been fun looking back on what's gone on over the last year and a half or so. There's, obviously a lot of hurt, a lot of suffering out there, but we also have to look at the positive things that came out of it, right? And I think there is a lot of positive, certainly more than the mainstream media would have you know. But a lot of good things are coming. I think there's a lot to look forward to, and it's going to be interesting times moving forward. But all we can do is keep learning, keep driving forward, pushing, helping each other out as a nation, really continuing to expand our capabilities and our defenses. So that's what we're here for. That's what cybersecurity is really about. I think it's beyond any one organization. We got to think about the of the American economy and our way of life. So that said, any final comments?
Everybody.
Microsoft for your security, then call us.
Yeah.
No, don't. We're going to have to delete this podcast. Okay, so
I prefer the new WordPress firewall they just came out with. It's excellent, and they have an endpoint protection solution as well that's just top notch.
Yeah, it's called Firehole. You haven't used that plugin, the Firehole plugin? Yeah. It's got a flaming hole right waiting for you to go right in there. Back door.
That we better call it here. This has been fun. We will do this again, but thank you all for joining us on the CyberAnts podcast. Go to cyberantspodcast.com. There's a web form. You can give us your thoughts, what you'd like us to chat about, topics, suggestions, questions you have, anything like that. We'd love to hear from you, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast and check out the book on Amazon as well. People love it. We've had CIOs say, hey, this is so great. I've bought copies for my entire IT department. Really good feedback. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Pick up your copy of the CyberAnts book on Amazon today. And if you're looking to take your cybersecurity program to the next level, visit us online at www.silentsector.com. Join us next time for another edition of the CyberAnts podcast.